You want to know a source of overwhelm that we often aren't really looking at honestly? It's something that I've struggled with. I still struggle with this one. It is trying to multitask. There's a myth around multitasking. That notion that you can multitask and get a whole bunch done. Real research says, no, actually, you get less done and you're definitely slower and you're less creative when you do it. And if you want to see that research study, it's on my blog, capturingthecharmlife.com. So there's a myth around multitasking. But nonetheless, we homeschool mamas get a lot of opportunities to do it. And even if we try not to, we'll get really good at it. And gradually, we'll get stellar at it. Like I'm sure there's a few other professions, I know there are, that also happen to know how to multitask. But we as homeschool mamas, we get good at that. But I don't recommend it because it's not satisfying. Our goal shouldn't be to get better at multitasking. It should be to actually get more present. Probably we sign up for too many activities and we assume that more activities is better. But straight up between you and me, presence is the thing that makes us feel more satisfied and definitely less overwhelmed in our homeschool. So you're going to get better at it without even trying though. So listen to this. You're going to have so much opportunity. You're probably, unless you're homeschooling just one child. Okay, if you're homeschooling one child, you tell me. Possibly you're able to fully expend yourself on just one child, but I'm guessing you got other stuff going on too, not just two kids. Because you might be working while you're homeschooling. Or you might need to cook, clean, answer the telephone, go to the bathroom, anybody? So there's always something that we can do. We think we're going to get more stuff done when we multitask, but the reality is we don't get more stuff done. We actually see that research says that we get less stuff done. We definitely get it done not as well, and we aren't as happy doing it. So multitasking is really just a recipe for overwhelm. What are the things that you do in your home to be more present in your homeschool or just in your life and in your days in general? I've got a few different ideas what I try to do in order to encourage single tasking. I've got a lot of different approaches, and do they go off like clockwork? Nope, not all the time. When kids are really little, when you've got kids in your home that are really young, it's just simply much more difficult to not multitask because everybody wants you. And even when your kids aren't young, you're responsible for your kids' education, for pretty much anything going on in the kitchen, developing their interests, watching what their interests are, trying to encourage that, grabbing the telephone, responding to all the other relationships you have. There's so many things. And that is not even including what I know many of us have is some sort of part-time gig going on at home that really doesn't need the attention of a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old or even a 16-year-old. Unless they have their own gig. But stuff still has to get done. So how do you do it when you've got all these things to do? The most effective tool that I've used was one that, I don't use this word lightly, it truly revolutionized how I approach things. And I keep hearing about it every time I hear about somebody talk about multitasking. It's called time blocking. So I sat down and wrote everything that I actually did in a day over the course of a week. And I discovered that I was wildly unrealistic. I mean, if I showed you the list of things, which you can see on my website, you would also say, could you even get that done in a week? But somehow I thought I could. To this day, I'm just relatively unrealistic. So when I write things down, when I talk about time blocking, I mean I write down everything that I'm doing so that I can have an idea of how much time it actually took. And in my experience, things always take longer than I think they're going to take. You can ask my family. This is true to this day. So time block instead. That's the first goal. Essentially, you're evaluating your reality and saying, is it possible to do all that? No, it's not. So if you think that you're going to try to do all of that, you're going to make it happen, you know you're not going to be happy doing it. You know that the homeschool atmosphere is not going to be happy. If you don't want to be doing it, don't do it at all, like sweeping. Or if you know you have to do it because you can't hire a housekeeper, that was me a few years ago. My husband said to me, "You kind of look angry as you're sweeping." And I said, "Because I don't want to sweep." He said, "Well, then don't sweep." I said, "I have to. Nobody else is going to do it." So he said, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. Or if you need to do it, choose to do it the way that you want to do it. He's kind of risking something there because that happened to be on a premenstrual week, so kind of risky. But he was right. Then don't do it. And so now I do it. And I also ask the kids to do it. But I do it enough that it makes me feel like we're generally tidy. What I've learned about multitasking is that it's really not happy tasking when we're multitasking. So here's a few things that I do to decrease multitasking and increase, ironically, my productivity. So I told you about time blocking, but also creating white space or margins around significant activities. So my family better not be watching this live because they know my tendency is to not put that white space or margin around times when we're leaving the house to go somewhere. Because to me, we're just going somewhere. It shouldn't take you that long to get your shoes on, grab the keys. For me, it's go get the goats, check to see if the goats are actually tied up in knots or if they really need to be unleashed from their leads. They need a little bit of food and water. Then I need to do the chickens food and water. I need to check on the dog to see what she's up to before we leave. There's more than one thing to do. Now that's a household with teenagers and a bunch of animals on a homestead. And probably the same level of energy might also be required if you have more than one toddler, preschooler, child that needs their shoes laced, or you fill in the blank. Whatever scenario we're in, guaranteed, if you're in homeschool, there is more than one thing to do before you leave the house. So the key is to leave a lot of margin or space around the time that you need to go somewhere. Include what you actually want to do in your homeschool. Don't include the things you don't want to do. Just because there's somebody else in another homeschool that's doing what they're doing and you think that's kind of cool that they're doing that, it doesn't mean that you need to do it. You can observe and enjoy it from afar. The key is to ask yourself, what is an education anyways? And then decide from that building block to actually include the activities that you want to include, the ones that are meaningful, relevant, things that you think your child would enjoy, the things you think you would like to share with your children. You get to decide, but include the things you want to do. Give your kids eyeball to eyeball time every day. That can be tricky in a homeschool family, which I'm sure non-homeschool families would say, really? Is it hard to actually sit and be present with your child when you're homeschooling? It can be. When your list is a mile long and your expectations are a mile long, you've got places to go. Often we don't really stay home. We've got so many activities outside of home that, it can be hard to have eyeball to eyeball time. But it really helps the homeschool atmosphere when you get that time with your child and they feel like they're attended to. Turns out there's less sibling conflict. There's less whining and complaining and stuff like that tends to detract from what's going on around us. And really, that's what we're here for, right? Is giving them those moments of energy, the happy energy, connection, building memories. Do it every day. Include time just for you every day. Did you know I was going to say that? Even when we go to the grocery store alone, and that is our only quiet time separate from our kids, it gives us perspective. Even if we're wrapped around, a grocery list a mile long and there's another 100 people in the grocery store, it's different loud than being at home or with your kids and having the demands of your kids. But I don't recommend the grocery store, as you know, finding a place at least once a week for an hour, just 15 minutes. Start where you can and keep building up so that you actually feel fueled. This will help you feel more at ease in your days, and you'll be more present in your days. And the last and the most important, I think, tool to practice that single tasking lifestyle in our homeschool is to practice mindfulness. It's training our brains to be present and in the moment. So if that means doing a daily meditation or having a reminder on your screen that says, it's 11 a.m., it's time to take a deep breath, to figure out how you're feeling, what thoughts are running through your minds, and just sit quietly for 30 seconds, 1 minute, until you've had a few breaths, quiet, deep breaths, just enough to be aware of what's really going on in here. Practice mindfulness vegetables every day. Charlotte Mason, I'm going to finish a quote with Charlotte Mason. If something must be done, it should be done well. If you have other ideas in how you can single task in your homeschool, I'd love to hear them down below.